New York Fed, former New York Fed President Bill Dudley, as you know, he took a real big shot at President Trump. He urged the Fed to get political. Don't lower rates, he said, because if you do, that would help Mr. Trump get re-elected. Oh, pure politics from a former New York Fed president. Incredible. Look who's here. Former Texas Congressman Ron Paul. We know you're no friend of the Fed, but what do you make of this? A former New York Fed chair getting real political.
Well, I'm delighted. He's exposing the Fed for what they really are.
Yes.
You know, they're very political. They usually hide it. Most presidents badger the Fed, but they do it differently than Trump has done it. And he's exposed them, and they fought back. But I think it tells you that they are a very political organization. And for Dudley to do this, I think it's fantastic. But it also shows the shortcomings of the Federal Reserve. They shouldn't be involved. But what he's done is pretty atrocious. I mean, they've badgered Federal Reserve Board chairmen and presidents over the years. But this, to conspire out in the open to try to get the president defeated, it's a little more blunt than usual.
That's for sure. Very blunt, I'd call it, quite frankly, because he came right out and said it. Now, I want your comment on negative interest rates in Europe. I know that we've talked about this before, but we got news today that Italy's unemployment rate went up to 9.9%. In Germany, retail sales actually fell 2%. They're sliding into recession. So, Ron, all this free money, negative interest rates, printing up a storm, it's just not working. But you told us that a long time ago.
Right, because there's no definition of the unit of account, which is the dollar for the world. And if you don't have a definition, it wanders around. Sometimes things go up too high and too low. But for the negative interest rates, that's historic, you know, and you've talked about that before. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I go back to the monetary policy, because if you can't define the currency, you know, I've asked the Fed chairmen before the committee several times, can you define a dollar? They really can't define a dollar. I said, what if I turn in a dollar? What are you going to reimburse me? Well, with another Federal Reserve note. And that's where the problem is. And if you can't define the measurement of value for everything, then you get into this difficulty of trying to find out what real interest rates are. And we don't know what they are because they don't make any sense. And that's where the bubbles come from, the distortions, the excessive debt, and all these problems emanate from the fact that we have a monetary system that's not a viable system. It's a fiat system, and we put too much you know, responsibility on the Federal Reserve, and now we know exactly what they're in the business of, rigging elections and trying to keep certain presidents from getting reelected. Rigging
elections, wow. I've not heard you go that far before, Ron, but I'm glad you said it on this program.
Well, maybe I should back off.
What are you doing this weekend? Are you barbecuing?
Haven't decided yet, but we'll be at home with the kids. Thank goodness we're not anticipating the hurricane to hit us, and hopefully it doesn't come our way. But it'll be a family weekend.
Well, I hope you have a great long weekend, because you deserve it, sir. Ron Paul, great guy. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.